It's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And to begin our conversation, which is on organ donation and transplantation of other tissues, let's quickly take a look at this background report pulled together by our correspondent, Ibrahim Dan Hamidou.
Imagine being able to save a life or receive a second chance at yours. Organ donation and transplantation make this possible. Globally, organ donation and transplantation are vital for patients with end-stage organ failure. However, Nigeria's journey has been long and challenging. The government and healthcare sector collaborate to enhance organ donation and transplantation. Unfortunately, unethical practices have plagued the system. In response, the federal government established the National Organ Transplant Committee to regulate and promote ethical donation and transplantation. The National Health Act 2014 provides a framework for organ donation and transplantation, prohibiting the commercialization of human organs and ensuring only authorized hospitals and medical practitioners can perform transplants. Public awareness and education are crucial for increasing organ donation rates. Healthcare professionals, including transplant surgeons, cardiologists, and immunologists, play a vital role in organ donation and transplantation. Key players in this episode will examine organ donation and transplantation of other tissues in Nigeria, which require continued effort and awareness. It's a gift of life and a second chance. Stay tuned and let's work together to make it a reality for those in need.
All right, thank you, Ibrahim Hamidou, for that background report. And now joining us for the conversation on organs donation and transplantation of other tissues. Let me begin by introducing Dr. Adegboyega Fakponle, consultant nephrologist, Zenith Medical and Kidney Center, Abuja. It's a pleasure to welcome you. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here on your show this morning.
Also joining us for the conversation from our Benin studio is Professor Philip Olayele Abiodun, consultant of pediatrics and gastrointestinal diseases and nutrition, former Dean, School of Medicine, University of Benin, former Vice Chancellor Adekunle Ajasin, University Akungba Akoko, former professor, consultant, of course, Sultan Qaboos University, Muscat, Oman, former consultant, Federal Ministry of Health, UNICEF on Child Survival and Nutrition, pioneer and former president, Nigerian Society of Pediatric Gastroenterology, Hepatology and Nutrition, and currently the chairman, National Tertiary Health Institution Standards Committee. Very long list. I had to stop. Many thanks for joining us, Professor Abiodun.
Good morning, viewers.
Let's begin with you, Prof, since we have landed on that very long list according to ERA. When we say organ transplantation and donation, what exactly are we talking about? What's the range?
The unethical practices going on about organ donation and transplantation in the country. Organ donation and transplantation is very important because it gives people second life when you have had or when you have some end organ failure. Is it the liver? Is it the kidney? Is it the eyes? And people who donate are giving other people second life. But unethical practices are on everywhere, mostly in developing countries, Nigeria inclusive. And our committee, the National Tertiary Health Institutions Standards Committee, has been given the mandate by the National Assembly to regulate organ donation and transplantation. Now, there are several aspects to this, and that is what our committee is now about doing, to give guidelines. There are several aspects. We have the ethical consideration, we have the legal framework, we have the healthcare infrastructure, we have public awareness and education. When I talk of ethical consideration, I mean primarily that before you donate an organ or before you use the organ of somebody, we must have informed consent. The person must be aware of what he's going to do, what is going to happen to him or her after he has donated, to be sure that his life is not endangered. In this regard, we also have to avoid exploitation of vulnerable population. That is, be sure that you don't just go on the road, carry somebody who is poor, tell the person, oh, we give you this and that, and give you this amount of money, we do this and that for you. And without that following person knowing the implications, he takes the money and doesn't know what is going to happen to him after that. So we have to introduce national guidelines in this regard. The legal framework says there should be no commercialization of human organs and mandates that only qualified medical professionals and institutions can carry out this procedure. In other words, you must go to regulate who is going to do it, where he has had his training, how many years, and all that before we allow anybody to do it. Then we have the infrastructure. There's no doubt that we have infrastructural deficits. So you don't just say because you have a doctor who can do it. You must be able to have all that in the laboratories, the investigations that need to be carried out on the donor and on the recipient before and after. So we must make sure that any institution that is going to carry out organ transplantation must have these infrastructures ready. The laboratory, the technological aspects, pre and post transplantation must be there. The aftercare of the donor and the recipient. We must look at the drugs, we must look at the laboratories, we must make sure that everything is there before any institution or individual can say is carrying out transplantation. Then there is also the public awareness. We must ensure that we educate the public, enlighten people that before death, they can give this organ out. After death, they can sign ahead of death, we're all going to die anyway. That, okay, after my death, you can remove my eye, you can remove my liver, you can remove my kidney. We talk of body and soul. The body is dead when you are dead, whichever religious body you belong to. So, you can give somebody a second life. If your kidney is still okay, if your liver is still okay, if your eyes, your cornea, if they are still okay, you can decide, please, after my death, you sign it and let the relations, the relatives know that you have donated it. And this means we need a lot of public awareness. We know beliefs about death, or whatever religion is the soul that we pray that should rest in peace. The body is gone. So you can help somebody by saying, okay, use my this, use my that. And then the experts will know after how many minutes, after how many hours, this can still be removed and transplanted and used for other people to live a longer life. So these are some of the functions we have. So we want to make sure that we do this, and guidelines are now being given that before anybody does, any institution does it, We must send people there. We have our guidelines. We know the things that they must have, and we give license to such institutions. And any health professional who is going to carry it out, we also make sure that we see the qualifications of that person and we monitor what they are doing. We want to ensure that each institution also has a committee that monitors each transplantation before and after. Talks to relations of the donor, make sure it's not that he's selling his organ and doesn't know the implications. There's no selling at all, no commercialization. So these are some of the guidelines which our committee is about to do. So we've put it together, and about a week ago we called stakeholders together to look at these guidelines. We had health professionals who are carrying out transplantation or who are interested there. We have from Ministry of Justice to look at the legal framework. We called our religious bodies to look at the religious ethical aspects of what we have put together to make sure that we are all on the same page when we bring out the guidelines. And anybody who does not follow the guidelines will now have to face the penalty, whether it's an institution or an individual. So they must all have the license to carry out, and we monitor that they are doing the right thing. That is what our committee is about to do. And we hope that in a few weeks, everything will be ready, and we also make it known to the public. So that was what our stakeholders meeting was all about a week ago in Abuja. We called all these people together, more than 100 people. We give them copies. They read their views. They told us their views, and we still gave them 2 weeks to look into it and give us their comments, after which we'll put everything together.
All right, many thanks, Professor Abiodun. Many thanks for that opening comment, detailed. I mean, you've told us everything that the committee is doing and all of that, but you didn't quite tell us the challenges, facing transplantation in the country at the moment, and then the types of organ transplants that are performed in Nigeria, and what are the success rates at the moment?
I can't tell you about the success rate. Meanwhile, these are things we are going to monitor. There are just some few that are being done. But again, we are just almost in every stage, our preliminary stage. We do read about different things in newspapers. Some say they can do this. I know one of the easy one, well, I won't say easy one, is bone marrow transplantation for people with leukemia, people with sickle cell disease. That is being done. I know it started in Benin. At one stage, Lagos is doing it now, and done some few. Some have tried to work on liver, heart transplantation, but again, these are just certain parts of the heart and all that. So this is part of the work of our committee to go and look at what people have been reporting. So I don't want to mention any specific people who are doing some. Some are illegal. Some we don't even know the details of what happens to them after that. So we're going to start monitoring all this. You say you are doing this and that. Your hospital must make sure that they follow the guidelines. And after that, there's going to be a register for all this so we can monitor them. These have not been done so far, neither at local nor at national level. So I can't tell you now about the success rate when you say you're doing heart transplantation. What part? What did you transplant? When you say you're doing kidney, where did you get it from? Is it viable? What was the problem with the person? I cannot tell you all those details now. That is part of the job we are supposed to start doing as from now, and we shall do it.
Thank you very much. Your committee appears to be still nascent, but what's the scope of your work in totality? What's the scope of your work beyond, the laying the groundwork, the framework, and all of it?
We set the guidelines. We give licenses to institutions and to people who are capable of doing this. We monitor what they are doing when they started it, pre and post transplantation, and we record this over time. And then we'll be able to tell the public the success rate, the failures, and all that. So we accredit them, institutions, individuals, and we monitor them. So, as you said, it's just nascent. We are just starting. But that is our plan, what we hope to do. And we're going to do it with the states at every level. Many of those carrying out even this soul transplantation at the moment are even private. So we have to also be sure that we can monitor them. But nobody will be allowed to do it now without license, without being accredited from the beginning that they can do it. License for individual, license for institutions.
Thanks, Professor Abiodun. Quite surprising that all the years that there have been reports by different medical facilities of transplantation being done here and there. There's no concrete record as to how, all of that was being done, all of that. I mean, it's been a long time coming, but it's good that your committee is here now. I'd like to find out, in your own view, being the chair of this committee, would you say that we have adequate infrastructure and medical personnel, to handle organs, transplantation, donation and transplantation in this country? I want you to just give an overview, considering what's happening in the health sector at the moment, the fact that we have skilled personnel, leaving the country, dealing with basic ailments is a challenge due to lack of infrastructure. This complicated aspect of medical, of health, would you say that Nigeria has the capacity, to handle it effectively?
Well, on a large scale, I would say we don't have. For infrastructure, we don't have. But there are certain areas which we can easily do. And I do believe that one of the things we want to do is even to encourage people, health professionals, to go into this field. When you talk of bone marrow transplantation, you talk of kidney transplantation, even heart, I believe we can. But we have to make sure that institutions, whether public or private, that are going to carry this out, expand, both with regard to their personnel. Cooperation among health professionals is very important. There are already organizations, there are societies now on liver transplantation, on kidney transplantation, where health professionals come together and they discuss these things. And whatever they need for them to expand and be really very competent in this, we're going to support them. There's no doubt about that the Federal Ministry of Health, we support them, and federal government, we support them. So it is our job to see those who say they are carrying, not an institution cannot be carrying out kidney, liver, all the transplantations. No. There are going to be areas where they are really experts. We're going to make this known with the time, and those who can do it already will make it known and also help them to develop. Things like cornea transplantation for the eye, that one, many private hospitals are doing that now, institutions are doing that. But we want to make sure that they follow rules, regulations, and whatever they need to help them develop, we want to encourage them. So at the moment, I will not say that we have enough for everything, but we have really some experts, whether within Nigeria or even outside. You see, some of the problems we also have is when you go abroad, you see Nigerians participating in these things. Some of them do come over here to say, okay, you hear of cornea transplantation, that transplantation and all that. But when they come from abroad, they do the job and go away. Who takes care of these people after that? So all these ones have to be regulated. You don't just come and say, I've done this liver transplantation in Nigeria, and then you disappear. No, we must have the framework. Now people in the country who are doing it, if they come to assist or they work together, And the care after the transplantation will also be carried out by our people. So we do have people here and there all over the country. We want to bring them together, as I've said. They have societies already. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and I think we are taking the first steps. There are some people carrying out this thing, but we have to be sure how well they are carrying them out. I don't want to mention any person or institutions, but we know that we do have some. And we want to expand. We also want to encourage training, more people being trained in this regard. And I think once they see that there's regulation, there are guidelines, we get our health professions to be more and more interested. I'm sure in some few years' time, we have a very good success rate. We have Nigerians all over the world doing these things. And we have some, if they are encouraged, even within Nigeria, who will also be able to expand on it.
All right. Professor Abiodun, thank you very much. Before we get on with this conversation, let's introduce our guest from Kano, Professor Aliu Abdu, consultant nephrologist at Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, Kano, Professor of Medicine at Bayero University, Kano, Vice President, Transplant Association of Nigeria, TAN. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right. We'll get back to Professor Abdu, but let's come back here in the studio for now and engage Dr. Fakmonle. What's your experience with organ transplantation, whatever it is, and what are the difficulties, what are the issues associated with it, of course, which is necessitating the establishment of this committee?
So I want to thank the Professor Abiodun-led committee. He's emphasized and talked about a lot of and laid the foundation for the framework for the work going forward, in which will greatly help organ transplantation in Nigeria. My own core competence is in the area of kidney transplantation.
Okay.
For how long have you been doing that?
Well,
or the facility?
The facility
How
has been, this is our 10th year in the area of kidney transplantation. So for me personally, I've been involved in kidney transplantation now for about 5 years. So it's some experience in this area. So if you want to talk about challenges for transplantation, a few of the things Professor Abiodun listed are some of the things we also face. Public awareness is still poor. A lot of people still think this can be done in Nigeria. There's a lot of reluctance in also donating kidneys. You see people also wanting to talk about commercialization of the whole process itself. It takes a lot of tenacity to do some of the things you do because of a lot of the infrastructural deficits we have in our country. We also think about the cost of transplantation. A lot of people too cannot even afford. Many people who want to get these things cannot. They barely can even afford the whole process. But I mean, you want to. I mean, the tougher one for us is even life after transplant itself. How people can even afford the cost of some of these medications, because if you can't, if you barely can afford transplant, taking care, the post care itself is also equally important that you cannot also de-emphasize. It's a process. We look forward to also having a deceased donor framework in Nigeria, which will also help us increase the donor pool. When you say disease donor process, Professor Abiodun mentioned a few of these, because you want, like he said, everybody is going to die one day, but you probably want people from that pool to be able to also increase people having access to also getting a kidney. So those are some of the problems we're faced.
All right. For the donation, those who
Yes.
are going to die, you want to think about the beliefs of certain people, where they believe that if they die in one place, they would reincarnate somewhere else.
Yes.
So if they donate one eye, they may end up being one-eyed in the next place where they are, going to be born. But anyways, we'll talk about all of those beliefs and religion, how it plays a role in this issue, transplantation. But talk about the medical facilities themselves. You said your facility has been doing this for over 10 years.
Over
You
10
have been
years.
in it for over 5 years. And the Professor Abiodun Committee is just coming up. Now, I'm sure there are other facilities that have been involved in transportation, across the country for many years.
Yes.
Would you say that there are challenges in terms of how it has been done so far, and then the important role that this committee will be playing?
Oh, definitely. The committee is really long. What they're coming with is really long overdue. It's good to harmonize the whole process. All sorts of people springing up come with all sorts of different things, and they're not even giving a clear direction as to how things should be handled. If you have a proper framework in place with proper coordination, I mean that will also improve the image of some of these things. The problem people have, people don't believe. And because people have heard all sorts of stories about healthcare in Nigeria, and truly there are a lot of private institutions doing a lot of good things. But it will truly be nice to harmonize, give the right license to people, support institutions who have been doing these things for a while, and ensure they also have the right infrastructure.
Have there been institutions that you have heard of or you have come across that have not been doing the right thing in terms of transplantation?
We hear all sorts of things in the news. You hear all sorts of things in the news.
What are likely the challenges? Inadequate personnel, infrastructure?
You hear of talking about underage creation of donors, underage donors coming into the whole process. Like also inadequate the right infrastructure, not having the right personnel in place. Because it's a teamwork. You can't do transplant without having the right team in place. And so if you don't have that right support, then it's a problem. You can't just have like a ramshackle building and just think of doing transplants. You must have the right infrastructure in place, the right licensed personnel in place, the right committees in place. It takes a whole team. It's huge. Running transplants is really a big deal. And if you don't have that, there's no business getting yourself involved in that at all.
Do you think there are facilities in this country that run organ donation for business, not for the purpose of saving lives?
Definitely, there will definitely be some institutions like that, and that's why, of course, it's a mixture of business and science. You also need a lot of money to drive whatever you're doing. Transplant is a very expensive business, not just in terms of even what people pay, but in trying to set up the whole right infrastructure and getting things in place.
When
It's
I mean
not
business,
cheap.
I mean
Yes.
facilities that just go on to harvest organs in a bid to make money and resell to people who need it. Do you think that
The system in Nigeria is not a perfect system. Definitely, there will be institutions doing such things on unethical practices, doing things like this. And the duty of this framework is to support such things and ensure they don't continue.
All right.
Yeah.
Dr. Faponle, thank you very much for sharing your experience. Let's head to Kanu, where Professor Abdu is waiting. Professor Abdu, I just wanted to find out, of course, he's talked copiously about the cost of setting up, facilities for transplant. Unfortunately, this is supposed to be life-saving, and if people can't afford it in the first place, then they have a problem. They just should rather die. Why is it such an expensive venture, that will make people say, look, when it comes to organ transplants, they just say, oh Lord, here I come.
I also understand that organ transplantation is very expensive. But because it's very expensive, you cannot exclude Nigerians from out of it. Say people that cannot afford, they are condemned when you get it and you die for that. It is a duty of the society, the government and the general public to see how they can come up with measures that will make the service affordable to those who are poor and those who are vulnerable. It is, I think, human rights aspect. There should be mechanisms in place to help those who cannot afford, those who are poor, either by the government or the health insurance company or the philanthropists should come up with something that will help those who cannot afford. I can tell you there are things that people can do at community level. There are things that can be done at individual levels, and there are things that can be done at the level of the government. And all forms of government have a role to play in this. I will give you an example. There are federal government institutions in Nigeria that are doing transplant or they have done some organ transplant. However, majority of those centers that belong to government are not functioning. Why? Because of policy, because of attention of the administration of the facility is not in the interest of the organ transplant. There are many centers. I'll give you an example. Aminikano Teaching Hospital and Obafemi Olo University Teaching Hospital are the oldest federal government institutions that are doing organ transplantation. Both of us started in 2002, over 20 years now. But look at what Dr. Fapole is saying. In less than 10 years, in private center, they have done quite more than what we are able to achieve in the public center. And most of the public centers that started transplant are dead now. They are not doing. Ibadan, Lagos, Maiduguri, Ilorin, they all were doing transplant at one time or the other, but they are not doing now. So government support. And then at the level of the individuals, you know, in Kano, we reach out to get help for people that cannot afford. And there are philanthropists that we approached, and they are able to come in and assist. I will give you an example. There are Good Samaritans that formed a kidney foundation. They go out and sought for help. One individual in government gave that foundation 100 million naira to start with. And this foundation have sponsored organ transplant on those that cannot afford it. And then when the naira thing come up, most of the drugs that people with organ transplantation take after the transplant, we call them immunosuppressive drugs. So when the dollar issue come up, it becomes difficult for them to afford. So even if you transplant, the person is not able to maintain the organ due to expensive immunosuppressive drugs that are needed after transplant. So this foundation reached out to a private facility in India where they source the medications and then they sell it to those that had the transplant at reduced or subsidized price. So this is what we can do at individual level. And then at community level, I can tell you example of a community in Jigawa State, Hadija, where kidney transplant is very rampant. And the people in the community come together and say, how can they help themselves? They call the elites among them, they donated money and they set up a kidney center. And that center is sustained by help from people of the area. And the kidney dialysis in that center is as cheap as 5,000 naira per session. They sustained the service through donations from well-to-do individuals from the area. So these are areas that should look at. The government must do what it can do, because I don't know, I'm a civil servant. I cannot afford the 20 million charged by Pafole for organ transplantation. So there must be a system. Government must have functional organ transplant centers to help the people of Nigeria and to the people that need it who cannot afford it. And then individuals must also come together to see how can assist people that need this organ transplant and they cannot afford it. So these are my take on this. It's expensive, but it shouldn't be out of reach for ordinary Nigerian under normal circumstances. The government must do its part. Individuals and communities should come together and see how we can help ourselves and get what we need. Thank you.
All right, many thanks, Professor Abdul. Let's get back to Professor Abiodun now in Benin City. Okay, looks like we have a connection issue with Professor Abiodun, but let's get back here in the studio. Dr. Fakwanle, you know, I would have really loved the chair of the committee, you know, to respond to, you know, what government can do. But what Professor Abdul is saying, that most of the government facilities are not working, you know, in terms of organ transplantation, and it's mostly private institutions. And now this committee has been set up to regulate the business of organ transplantation in the country. As a private facility, are there concerns as regards some of the regulations that may be put in place that may, you know, restrict, you know, these private facilities from, you know, delivering their services optimally? Do you?
Well, as long as the committee comes up with something that will provide a lot of support in terms of infrastructural support, because of course, like you know, if the private sector, you run everything, you generate everything. If you don't generate the whole institution itself, the center would die. There are many ways government hopefully, many ways government can come in and support our work. To even for private, yes, even make things cheaper.
So you can reduce the cost
so
on patients.
Trust can come down. I mean, you will know that if you have to run things like that, most of the things you do to have a good work, or you have to import them. The machines, the molecular lab itself will go into millions of dollars to set up.
But it's once and for all.
Yeah, it's once and for all, but you will have to, wherever you got, you have to maintain it. You have to buy the reagents to sustain what you are doing. And you need to keep importing these things.
And you have to make profit.
And you have to make profit.
I heard that Professor Abiodun is back now. So let's find out from him, really, if this committee is looking at how government can do much more. Professor Abiodun, I just hope you heard Professor Abdul when he spoke and talked about government, the need for government to do more. The fact that government facilities that are involved in transplantation are not functional, or rather just very few, you know, are still functional. Is the committee looking in that regard? And then our doctor here has also said that, you know, government can also support private facilities just so the cost can come down. Is the committee looking in that direction, or is it just about regulation to limit, you know, the private sector, you know, that is involved in this at the moment?
Now, let me talk about certain aspects first. When we talk of organ, we're also talking of tissue. In other words, we don't need to remove a whole organ. There are organs and tissues you can give while you are alive and you still go on with your normal life. That is the job of the committee in each institution to look at. Is it the liver? You can live with your liver. I have a child who is now 9 years old. They did liver transplantation, not here in this country, just by removing part of the tissue of the liver of the father and giving it to the child. So it's not just talking of death and death and death and death. The bone marrow, for people with sickle cell or some cancers of the blood and all that, you can donate it while you are still alive. So we should. It's not just talking about death. Definitely nobody will give his eye while he's still alive. So cornea, all those ones, but some of these organs, and I say tissues, even the in vitro fertilization, you are carrying something from someone into the other. So let us look at it only in terms of death. So while you are alive, you can do something. When you are dead, something can still be done with some of your organs. So I want us to get that clear, so we don't just get scared and talk of death. That's one aspect. Number two, government can help a lot with some of their institutions by making sure that these things are available. But I've said most of the transplantation are even going on now in public institutions. Number three, Health insurance, I believe, can also do a lot. We have to do a lot more of enlightening our people about contributing to health insurance. Car insurance is compulsory. All of us do the insurance without having accidents throughout. But we contribute. So that money will be used for those who have accidents. So we need a lot of public enlightenment and education. First, about what and who to donate. Number two, about health insurance, that we have the universal health insurance. So government has started, it's not just by giving money, but also by setting out the framework. Like this committee now, that we set the standards, monitor and this on that. And then infrastructurally, if they decide they see places where people are really able to, government can support. So we shouldn't, we are all government if we like it like that. The only thing is that we should all also make our contributions. First, by our readiness to donate. Two, by supporting institutions that are carrying out these things. And preventing commercialization of organ and tissue donation and transplantation. Those are all areas where everybody can contribute. The government can set out the guidelines and monitor that things are done correctly. So it's not just money. Or it's not, it's an expensive deal in certain areas. All the tests that need to be carried out on the donor, then the operation that will be carried out, and then the post-operative care. So they are just different aspects. But I think the government has started now by setting up a group that is to bring guidelines and monitor. Then financially, you see, the basic infrastructures in the institutions have to be there. Not even necessary for organ transplant. You need water, you need electricity, you need all this. And then government can support also in training personnel while they are already qualified to make sure that they go on with the trend, the developments in all these areas. So I think all of us can help.
Right. Professor Abiodun, but I would like to stay with you. Will your committee be willing to make these recommendations to government? Because what we hear, 20 million, how many Nigerians can afford that? And if we are looking to insurance, in fact, insurance seems to have become worse over time, because initially there are basics you could get with insurance. Today, basics like meds for diabetes, for instance, are not regularly available. So if those basics are not there, is government going to go into transplantation? You are talking about providing water, providing facilities, providing equipment. Will your committee make this recommendation, and how far can government go? How far is government willing to go?
That is the job of our committee to make the recommendations. And we are making it. We've started. Everybody has a role to play. The media, bringing us here now to talk to the people. You are making a lot of contributions. Enlightening the people. Can you donate? Can you not donate? Don't let your kidney be, don't sell your body for money. Don't do this, but you can do this, you can do this. We all have a role to play, honestly speaking. And I think the government has started by setting up committees to look into this. Then the public, there are so many foundations that are already helping. And once they are enlightened, they know about this. There are some rich people who can even set out something for, I told you some of the transplantation, especially cornea and all this, they are being done privately. And don't forget that even the in vitro fertilization that we are doing now is also organ transplantation. And many people are already doing these ones. So I don't think we should just be pessimistic and say government cannot do this, government cannot. We all have to contribute. This is wonderful, the job you have done this morning, bringing us to talk to the people, to know what it is all about. That is helping. It's even making it cheaper, because people can know, oh, I can help in this area. Oh, I can give this. Oh, I can give second life to somebody. Oh, I can. So it's not, it is expensive. Even the drugs, to make sure that the drugs that are being used are genuine. Because I must tell you, I have some people who have had to use drugs, and we found that they were fake drugs. So all this monitoring, there are organizations, there are committees within government, NAFDAC and all that monitor drugs. So it's not just when they carry money and take this million, take this billion. What if the money is not well used? So there are ways. I believe we can. As I've said earlier, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. I think we've taken the first step, or we are taking the first step. We shall get there. I've been all over the world. I must say, I trained in Germany, I worked in Saudi Arabia, I worked in Oman. I've seen what things are like. They didn't all start from the top. We all must start from the beginning. The only thing is we should all make our contributions, like you have done, like the newspapers that are reporting illegal transplantations. We are all contributing, we all have a role to play. I'm sure of that.
Many thanks, Professor Abiodun. Let's get back here in the studio, Dr. Fakunle. I want you to talk about the patients now, the recipients and the donors. We've talked about the cost of having the transplantation. What about the cost of aftercare after the transplant is done? Do facilities, actually cater for the donors? Imagine someone who donates a kidney, for example. Is there aftercare, for such patients? Because Professor Abiodun was talking about educating people. A lot of people think that once you have donated something, your lifespan has reduced. That's like the mentality. And then speak to us about the aftercare. And then what are the beliefs that is hindering, the number of donors that you get? I mean, not donors who want to make quick money, because we hear of that, but donors who are willing to donate just so that another person can live.
Okay, so every facility involved in transplant, like my own facility, provides care, not just for the donor, but also for the recipient. For you to have been found, for you to donate your kidney, of course, you must have been found to be fit. Fit in the sense that you will have gone through a number of tests to be sure that you are also not putting your life at an unnecessary risk over time. And you must have passed all these tests and certified okay before you are allowed to, before you're allowed to donate your kidneys. That's for my own field. And then there is also a mechanism in place provided for donors who would be scheduled for long-term intermittent visits at 6 months, at 1 year, and then a constant follow-up, sometimes with phone calls just to check up on them. There's something like that in my facility to look after some of these donors, not just the recipients. It's safe to donate. We keep saying that over and over, but you must have gone through all the tests. If at any point in time we think there's something out of place, then you won't donate. You won't be allowed to. You won't even be allowed to donate your organ in my facility. So there's room in place to look after the donors. There's room in place to also look after the recipients. We need a lot of public awareness, a lot of talk. Some of the drawbacks, like you said, is people finding it hard. People think there's a problem. You reduce like their lifespan. There's a lot of sometimes religious belief, or they've told me not to donate my kidneys. Sometimes, although on medical grounds, like maybe there's a family history of this and that, so sometimes we, of course, we won't allow such things, won't even allow the donor to, maybe your brother and this thing is wrong in the family, you won't be allowed to donate. But aside that, religious beliefs, societal beliefs, so public awareness, education is key. It's safe to donate. You won't just be taken from the streets or whatever. You're coming in, the recipient is coming with his donor, subjected to very rigorous tests before the transplantation itself, and then there's room for follow-up.
What
on
are
the
some of the
short term.
stories that you hear from donors? You know, because I know there are certain people who, as simple as blood, they don't donate blood and they
Yeah,
don't
I
receive
know.
blood.
Yes.
So you're talking about something bigger than blood. Now
Yeah,
you're talking about a full
yeah.
organ or a tissue. So what are some of the comments you've heard from potential donors as to why they would rather not donate and all that?
Oh, okay. If I donate my organ, I won't be able to have more children, to reduce my fertility. I will not be able to do anything. I'll be productive at my workplace again, because I've donated an organ. So, I mean, these minor things. Or some people will think, and then they would sometimes they put a burden on the brother, or elder brother puts a burden on the recipient for life. Everything, there's headache, is because I've donated my kidney. So you hear some of these things, stories up and down, but we need to just keep talking. Platforms like this to emphasize that it's safe to donate. It's right. You come in. If there's anything wrong with you, I mean, from head to toe, and after being checked, you would not be allowed. And you are not putting your life at an unnecessary risk because you have donated your kidneys. Yes.
All right. Dr. Fakbole, thank you. Though I know that some people could develop things that were not found during the test after, and then they will blame it
on the kidney. Exactly. They think it's
kidney.
Because they've donated the kidney.
But let me get quickly to Kanu with Professor Abdul. I want us to speak about, those who receive themselves and the safety of organ transplantations. For instance, over the years, I have known more than 5 people who have had kidney transplantations. Incidentally, all of them are dead. And that calls to question, how long can people live after donating or after doing kidney transplantation? How long can they live normal lives, or it's just for a while?
Simple answer is that they can live as long as God has destined the life they can spend on this earth. There's nothing like restriction on the lifespan because you receive an organ. Quite all right, there are so many factors that determine the lifespan of an organ after transplantation. One of the factors are the pre-transplant preparations, like Dr. Popole said. The preparation has to be as vigorous as possible. The match has to be as good as possible, as excellent as possible as we can get. And then the after transplant care. Many a times you get a patient that come for transplantation, the team is carried away by just helping him out of the problem of the organ failure. Little is thought of the after care. So I have seen a patient that received transplant, and then he can no longer afford to sustain the immunosuppressive medication that are needed to keep the organ alive. So these are a lot of factors. That's why the preparation for transplant must be as rigorous as possible, looking at factors before and after. On the contrary, I have seen patients that survive more than 20 years post-kidney transplant. And they are doing well. I have a lot of examples to give. So it depends. There is nothing like pegging life span for individuals that receive an organ. They can live as long as they can live in as much as there is after transplant care. And then there are other causes of death, not necessarily related to the organ transplant. Like, for example, a patient that had kidney transplant, after transplant, he's doing well with his kidney. He can get heart disease. He can get diabetes. He can get any other infection, whatever, any other disease that ordinary people can get. He is also prone to that. So if it is not carefully managed, he can die from that. It has no relation with it. We call it dying with a functioning graft. And it pains transplant physicians a lot. We don't want our patient to die with a functioning graft. So to summarize, there are many factors that affect life after transplant. Some of them have to do with preparations of the transplant itself. Some of them have to do with life care after transplant. So I don't think there is a specific reason to do with organ transplant that may cause somebody to reduce his lifespan.
Expensive after a transplant. You already pegged transplantation at about 20 million, but care after the transplantation, is it also very expensive? Professor Abdul.
It is very expensive because almost all the medications are brought in the country from outside. And you can see the situation in the country now when the dollar is going the rate, I cannot even describe it. So anything that is being imported in the country, the cost is more than double now. So this can really affect the life after care. And we have to call on the transplant physicians, Papule and myself and any other person involved in transplant. We must be careful with selecting the person that are going for transplant. If the person we assess that the person may not be able to afford the care after a transplant, it's better not to do the transplant. Just make your figures looking bad, and then you may scare others because of the number of people that died out after the transplant. And this to help the question asked Prof. Building what government can do. Government can do a lot. Look at this aspect of post-transplant care. The government can subsidize the medications the patient.
All right, thank you very much for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria, where we have been discussing organ donation and transplantation. Let me quickly get back to Benin with Professor Abiodun. Just during the break, we were having a hearty conversation, and we realized that you are saying we shouldn't just talk about death, but you find that for many reasons, a lot of people that are alive can't donate organs. You are diabetic, you are hypertensive, you have high BP, a lot of reasons for which you can't donate. And so doesn't it make sense to even focus on those who would agree to give it away when they pass, because that's the larger pool from where you can get organs for people who are alive to keep living?
Well, I've said again, there are organs, we talk of organ and tissue. Let's be clear about that. No doctor will remove anything from somebody and that will lead to reduction of the life of that person, just to make another person to live longer. That is a basic principle. So you must, and Prof has said that there are a lot of tests that will be carried out that will make you to qualify to be a donor. There are some transplantation, I told you of stem cell, bone marrow. It will shorten your life in any way. And you will not shorten the life of somebody to make somebody live longer. Let's be clear about that. And that is why we say, first of all, tests must be carried out, that you are qualified. No commercialization. Don't say because I'm poor, let me sell my this one and that. When you have other morbidities, the doctor will make sure you don't have other comorbid like, say, hypertension, diabetes. He will carry out all those tests to make sure that you are qualified so that you can die of other things, but it will not be because they removed anything from you. That is not allowed, ethically not. Then we talk of even the age. At what age can you donate? At what age can you receive? You can be sure somebody of 80 years will still be ready to receive a kidney to live a bit longer. But it should not be at the detriment of the donor. And I told you of an infant who had a liver transplantation. He's still alive. He's 10 years old now. The father is alive. They just took part of the liver and the father is living it's quite okay. So we don't just take organ and say, okay, your life can be reduced. Are you ready to reduce your life so that this one will live longer? Or papa of 80, 90, you still want to get an organ from somebody. So we not talk only of quantity, but quality of life. It must be worth it, this living, if you want to receive anything. And the person who gave you must not suffer because of you. So the surgical care and the post-surgical care, these are very important aspects of the organ of this topic we are discussing. The person who donates must not suffer anything. And when we say payment, all those things will be taken care of. If the donor needs, the cost of transportation, if he needs some supplements after this, to make sure that it's okay, that one will be paid for. But that one will then be decided by the committee in each institution that will decide on that one. But to say we are selling it for this and this amount, we don't allow that. It's not. And your lifespan must not be reduced by the fact that you gave your kidney or gave it. You can die of any other thing. That's just very important. So I think I need to stress that again.
All right. Many thanks, Professor Abiodun. I'd like you to tell us a bit about the legal framework around donation and transplantation, if there is in the country, and then if there's any plan to review it by the committee, to call for a review.
The guidelines we've written, we talked about different areas, legal framework, all that. We've given that now to the legal people to help us look at that. There are some penalties for one thing or the other, which I cannot tell you now offhand, but some of them are being reviewed. And in our meeting, we also give to the Ministry of Justice to still help us look into that one. But I think more important for us is to know that if you do this, you don't follow the rules and that, you'll be penalized. How much the penalty is depends on what it was before was too cheap, but we increased that one. But I think more importantly, if we can enlighten the people, the professionals have to follow their own professional ethics in doing their work, but the public too has to be enlightened as to what to do. So the legal framework, I mentioned it at the beginning. I talked about the ethical aspect, then I talked about the legal framework that says no commercialization, no this and unethical practices will be penalized. There's no argument about that one. If they need, if some of the acts of parliament need to be reviewed, then we also pass all this one further for further review. But there will be penalty for not following the guidelines or not following the rules and regulations as far as that is concerned. Specifically for each one, there will be.
All right, Professor Abiodun, thank you very much. Let's get back here in our Abuja studio with Dr. Fakmonle. Now, the issues that you have already talked about that are common with the practice of transplantation, the myths associated with it, the cultural issues that you hear people throw up. How best do you think they can be handled, just so that you can improve the pool from which people can get this life-saving help?
It's not going to be a short-term thing. It's going to be a long-term thing to change people, to reorientate people. And it's not just going to be a one-man thing. I mean, a lot of public awareness. I mean, we probably might need to partner with even institutions like the National Orientation Agencies. We need to throw out a lot of statistics. We need to go into partner with religious bodies.
Fortunately, we don't have the statistics.
There are, but because, I mean, these things have not been thrown out. Now, if it is thrown out, then this might change a number of people's perception towards donation. Like, it is safe. It is safe. You're not just going to be taking like a sheep without just slaughtered anyhow like an animal. It's safe. It's good. You are saving someone's life. You are improving the quality of someone's life. We need to throw these statistics, push it out.
When you talk about statistics, you wonder
Yes.
how credible that will be, considering the fact that it's not been regulated, I mean, before now.
And so that's why the Professor Abiodun-led committee, they're doing setting up the right framework. This being put in place, we will now do a lot of public education, awareness, not just one man. Partner with so many bodies, throw out the statistics, talk about success story, talk about people's lives who have changed. See, I mean, make people, I mean, and then, this will convince a number of people, and over time, I mean, you are not, because you've donated a kidney, you are not reducing your lifespan. You have been found to be healthy, fit, okay, for you to have had one of your organs taken away, or your tissue taken away from you, and in no way would your fitness or your
be compromised.
Yes. We talk about, in the field of nephro, we talk about the fact that everyone can do well on one kidney, one good kidney. It doesn't mean you now become unhealthy.
But what's the guarantee that that one good kidney at the time of donation will remain good after donation?
Okay.
That's fit. That's fit,
Okay.
right?
Anyways, Professor Abdul. Well,
You now see why people don't want to take the chance.
let's get to Professor Abdul now. You know, I'm just thinking in my head. But, you know, I want you to talk to us about what we can do as a country, you know, to get this right. This is critical, really. A lot of people need this to stay alive. You talked about a child, and, you know, yes, it shows that it's important that we do donation and transportation successfully in this country. In your own view, what will be some of the recommendations you'll be giving for us to get it right? Talking about facilities, the government, patients, as well as donors themselves.
First of all, I want to commend the effort of the government in setting this committee. This is a step in the right direction in the whole donation transplantation, and it gives room for genuine in the practice. There are a lot of things that can be done. It's not enough to set up a link out document, document. If there is no implementation, if there is no follow-up to make sure that the guidelines are fully followed and the punishments were meted on them, go against the guidelines, then it's just like doing a zero work. And another thing the country can do is to basic infrastructure. One, the government can decide.
It looks like we have a connection issue with Professor Abdul. I hope that will get better, you know, so we can get his views as we begin to round up the conversation. But let's go to Benin now and speak with Professor Abiodun. I'd like you to respond to this. Yes, I know your committee, you know, intends to do so much, you know, to set this right. But just speak concerning areas that you think that we need to, you know, to do as a people, whether be it government, be it individuals, and of course, you want to talk about donors and recipients themselves.
I'm not quite sure. Who should do? I didn't quite get it.
Okay, we're about rounding up the conversation. So I'd just like to hear your views on what you think, your recommendations on how we can get this right. Talking about, I know your committee intends to do so much, but, you know, just speak to other areas that you think we can, you know, work on just so we get this right.
Well, as I've said, the committee has been set up. We will make our recommendations where government should assist. First of all, to help the committee to be able to examine the different institutions and individuals that are doing it, support, and I think they're going to do that, and to accredit them and to be able to monitor. We believe we will need to have a register. First of all, to register who is doing what and what they are doing, and be able to say, to monitor their progress. first in following the guidelines and also in what they are doing, how they are improving. We recommend to government to help the institutions that I want to do it, to be able to maintain a good standard, to expand. We'll encourage the government to train individuals, get more experts in this field. If we have to have different areas for different experts or different transplantations, we want to do that. Then we want to recommend a lot of support for advocacy and enlightening of the people. We want our people to know that there are organs you can donate while you are alive and that your life will not be shortened, and that by doing that, you are giving second life to other people. We want to enlighten the people that after death, you can sign ahead of time, you can remove my eye, you can remove this, and the experts will know whether these are viable organs and how soon they have to do it. We want to encourage the governments and the institutions to set up banks where you can store some organs that can be used for within a certain period of time. We want to have a register of all sorts of things, organs that are donated at quick places, at quick banks, and make sure that we are fair to people, that they follow the rules and regulations. And when we have such banks, it will be a matter of first come, first serve, not the richer should get this and the poor should not get. So when we have such a queue, that will be well monitored. Then we want to call on individuals to support institutions, individuals in such organizations. We want to enlighten the people and appeal to them not to allow themselves to be sold or part of their bodies to be sold. It must be informed consent. You must be able to give it down. Then when people are dead, once we allow this and people write it down, you can remove my this and that, for the relations to respect what that person has written down. And to know that the body belongs to the soil, it will degenerate. It's only the soul that will not be used. And we are not transplanting souls. So those are areas we think we can, but we believe we need a lot of advocacy for our people and support. I think that government will be asked to support financially in monitoring and improving on infrastructure, in training more health professionals to do this. And I think those are the areas we want to encourage government to do.
All right, Professor Olayele Abiodun, Chairman, National Tertiary Health Institutions Standards Committee. We thank you very much for your time this morning and your thoughts on the program. It's been a pleasure.
I want to encourage the media to help us to report honestly, transparently on any illegal practices, unethical practices that are being carried out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Now, back here in the studio as we begin to call time on this program, I'm just wondering, the last comments of Professor Abiodun, can we do all of this in isolation? You're talking ethics, talking morality, talking about not selling your kidney. And I ask, given the economic situation, an individual who barely has good food to eat, and you are telling him about being, a philanthropist to donate his kidney, talking about charity without selling it. Can you deal with this in isolation? Don't they all go together? Because it's your condition that determines, to a large extent, how you are likely going to behave. And that's why people tell you that when you say you are not corrupt, wait until they put you in a position to be corrupt first, then you can tell us whether you are corrupt or not.
That's why the emphasis, it sounds like a third world problem. It's not just Nigeria. The year of stories of commercialization and all sorts of things. It's a third world problem. Nigeria is not just in isolation. Of course, it is. It's not it's not uncommon to hear such things in the third world, and because of how bad the economic situation truly is. Left to people alone, they just want to go on to do anything easily to make money without even the right orientation in place, whether it's safe, whether it's not safe, as long as it will affect them something and to, put some money in their pockets. And so that's why.
And buy a Benz.
And buy Benz. Some of them, they just want to collect. They don't even know what to do with the money. They've made some, they want to hear they've made this and that. It's common in the third world. Nigeria is also not out of this league. And so that's why this framework must be in place. We can't, it's difficult, but we have a role, definitely we have a role to play, ensuring that we play our part in making sure that we're not part and parcel of this, and then discouraging this to the barest minimum.
Many thanks, Dr. Fakwanle. Only time will tell if this committee will be able to fish out the quacks and those who do this, harvesting, for financial gains. But let's get to Kano now as we round off the conversation. Professor Abdul, I'd like to hear your final thoughts.
In a minute.
Yeah. Just to encourage the committee to continue the good work and then to ensure the implementation of whatever recommendations that are good that come out of the committee. And we want to encourage the government to do more in terms of organ transplantation in Nigeria by protecting the donor and protecting the recipient and making it affordable, available and affordable to common Nigerians.
Thanks, Professor Abdul, consultant nephrologist at Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, Kano, a professor of medicine at Barrow University, Kano, and vice president, Transplant Association of Nigeria. Many thanks for being our guest again today. We do sincerely appreciate you for your time. Thank you, Prof. And of course, we'd like to appreciate Dr. Adegboyega Fakwanle, consultant nephrologist, Zenith Medical and Kidney Center, Abuja. Many thanks for being our guest. We appreciate you.
A pleasure.
All right, so that's Good Morning Nigeria this Friday. I'm Ian Rejan. Have a great weekend.
And I'm Victor Azu. Thank God it's Friday.